What I really love is that as I add more shape, I'm not just increasing the amount of saturation, I'm also increasing the sense of intimacy. And this helps me squeeze even more potential out of my 416. Check this out.
From the mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemcoff.
Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. So when you acquire a 416 for voiceover, you are investing in your career because it is an industry standard voiceover microphone. And here, let me just manipulate these settings here as I talk. So what you're hearing now is just a little bit of saturation. This is the way I like to have it set up for stuff. So there's a little bit of saturation on it. And when I take this all the way down, right, you can really hear how clean this is. But what's beautiful about this is that the high end, listen to how smooth the high end is on this. It's not rolled off, but the high end is extended so far that it doesn't feel like the high end hits a wall. It really sounds natural. It doesn't break up in that weird digital artifacty way that sometimes you get with the 416. I mean, the 416 was designed to record to tape, right? So let's add a little tape-like saturation, right? There we go, right? Listen to that. Listen to how forward that is. Listen to how that comes to life. So what I have here really quick, so this shape here is a saturation circuit that adds a really nice soft clipping. It's really tube-like, but it doesn't have like the transient smearing that tubes do. Right? So you're getting the good without the bad, especially for voiceover. You got this great low-cut filter, right? If I take the low-cut filter all the way down, you can feel all that low end. Way too much, especially when you use the 416 up close like this, you get a lot of proximity. And you want to take that out because you do not need that for voiceover. But listen to that. The low cut is so nice. It's not imparting anything weird, right? Sometimes you get that filter on there and it just has a weird sound to it. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's almost like a weird honk that's down there. But here I can really kind of take it and tailor it. How much mid-range do I want? Do I want to really hollow out that bottom end, which I don't need, right? And then you got this great compressor, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But this saturation circuit, this is everything. Because again, right? I mean, the 416 is amazing, but it for voiceover, it is a one-trick pony. It has one tone, and that's it. So here, listen to that. So again, right? So I've taken my voice down to a really soft level. And when you get down here, it's a little extreme, right? But I mean, listen to that. I mean, I am almost just above a whisper, and yet it feels a lot more full, right? So when you're doing compassionate reads, right? When you're doing caring reads, when you're talking about healthcare or, I used to do a spot for one of the counties here in California for, it was for like deadbeat dads trying to, I shouldn't laugh about that. They're trying to fix their payments, right? Their payments or whatever. So, but you had to be compassionate about it. And I do a lot of medical stuff. And you gotta, when you do that, right, you're not projecting from your diaphragm, right? You're not up here. You're not pushing your voice for that. You're talking in a very conversational manner. And here I can bring it down and add a lot of that nuance and character that I would, especially for compassionate reads, especially when I'm trying to be sympathetic, right? And you get that fullness. You get something that feels not so much in your face, but in your space. So it really feels more like I'm organically really much closer to you, speaking softly to you, having a very important conversation with you. And I mean, that's what I love, because if I do that same kind of read with no saturation on it, right, it feels, if I back off my voice a little bit more, it really feels dull. It feels like I'm further away from you than I want to be. But if I use that same tone and I bring this up a little bit more, listen to that. Listen to how much more intimate that is. And really what we're talking about with the 416, right, is the ability to use it on more types of jobs than just promo and regular commercial stuff. I mean, for commercial stuff, it's great. If you're barking into the 416, it's great. It imparts its own saturation. But that saturation can sound ugly, especially in the digital realm. I mean, remember, this thing was designed in the era of tape, where the high end of this thing, the high end, which is a little bit bright and a little bit sharp on some people, that high end, when it meets tape, right? Tape has a roll off to it. So it meets it and it tames that high end. So you don't get that weird artifacty high end that sometimes you do with the 416. And here, right, even though there's no roll off, there's no high end roll off, the high end actually extends really far, right? on the Sculpter. It extends way beyond 20K. And that allows it to sound a little bit more natural, allows the high end to kind of just dissipate naturally like it would in a natural environment, right? So that's what I love about this. It sounds organic and natural, and yet I'm manipulating the crap out of it. Look at that. Look at how much saturation I have on that. It's like at like 2 o'clock, 2:30. If I put it even higher up, right? Again, the intimacy of that and the way that just adding a little bit of saturation just really adds that nice little front end push to it so that you can get more of a nice commercial tone without pushing your voice, without pushing it from your diaphragm, without being more of an announcer voice. Because truthfully, really, what people are looking for more than anything these days is a natural voice, a natural sounding voice. Now, even if here, I'm going to add a little bit more gain here, right? So still, it feels nice. But again, you get this, and you also get this 4.5K lift with this saturation. That helps bring it a little bit more forward. So I like that. Now, the compressor, right? The compressor is amazing for voiceover. Because especially, the 416 is really sensitive. So it's really easy, especially when you're pushing into it, when you're barking into it, when you're shouting into it. That first onset of the very first syllable, right? This weekend only. Come on down, right? If you're doing that, you will see that oftentimes in your DAW, that very first syllable, right? The spike of that in your DAW is really high, and then everything else feels a little bit more in the normal range. But that first onset, so if you can just kind of get this, so this weekend only, one night only, 10% off this weekend only, right? So you can see it triggering. But what I love about it is even if you just overshoot it a little bit, listen to that. So I've got a little bit of compression happening on pretty much everything. And if I take it out, right, you don't hear a tonal difference of when it's in the circuit or when it's out of the circuit. It's not adding weight. It's not adding any gloss to it like an 1176 does. Right? A lot of the compression that we like to use on voiceover imparts its own tone. But because this is so natural sounding, right? It's transparent. So you can do a lot more with it, especially when it comes to sibilance. Now, you're hearing this with no EQ on it, no EQ at all. And usually on a 416, I need a fair amount of de-essing. It's a crispy sounding mic on me on a lot of occasions. And I know some of you have said you use 2 de-essers at the same time, back to back to really combat your sibilance. But what I love about this is that it really is not getting all crispy on the high end. Even when I dial this up, right? My S's don't really feel like they're not punishing your ears. That's what I like about it. So there is like magic going on here. Now, the difference that I found, right, trying to achieve something similar, trying to achieve more tonal variation, trying to get a little bit more, I bumped the camera. Trying to achieve more with plugins has not worked out quite as well because here's the thing. I hadn't even thought about this, right? But there are things that when you use a preamp, right? You use a real analog preamp. There are certain harmonic nuances. There are certain linearities in your sound. There's certain ways the transients are handled that cannot be replicated as accurately with a plugin. And that's the thing. It's like it sounds more organic. And when you're using something like the Sculpter, right? All of these circuits were designed to work in concert with each other. So they all sound really good together. When you have to use like different plugins, right? If you're using a different plugin for your de-essing and then for compression and then EQ, right? So you're stacking plugins, which is what I used to do. A lot of times what you don't get is that organic, really combination of all of your components together, right? Sometimes really the sum of the parts here is what really matters, more so than each individual piece of processing that you're doing. So you get something with when you're going through a preamp like this, like a channel strip like this, that is a lot easier to dial in than when you're dealing with plugins. That's what I love about it. And I find this to be a real game changer for me with the 416 because I think that some of you here, I'm just going to manipulate this a little bit more so you can hear the different tones. And again, like I'm really down here, but it feels more in your face than, like again, if I go down here in this voice like that, it feels dull, but this feels more alive. This feels more real. So what I really love about this whole thing is that it does help me make the 416 more versatile because I think I've made it clear that the 416 is not my favorite mic. And a lot of it is because, it is, for voiceover, it's a one-trick pony. Now, in the general realm of reality, the 416 brings with it the legacy of being used on countless TV, film, video productions, for decades. It is really kind of pretty much the de facto established sound of dialogue. And, when you use it up close like this, right, there are certain liabilities. There is that proximity effect. There is the extra saturation that you get when you're really shouting into it. But if you just want to use it really more like just talking into it at a lower volume, so that, but still getting that nice edge that'll help cut through everything, right? The difference is that this is you can really dial in the amount of saturation you want. When you're shouting into the 416, this weekend only, come on down, right? When you're really just promoting the crap out of it, you're getting what it imparts on your sound. And a lot of times that doesn't sound really great. And a lot of times now that announcer sound, that like really pretty much in your face announcer barking, talking at you is not what people want. They want normal people talking sound, right? They want the sound of like conversational stuff, even for tags on promos and stuff. But if you can add that little bit of extra edge to it, bring it out a little bit more in the front, it's going to get noticed more. And that's what I like. So what do you think? The 416 again, it's a great mic, but it's only part of the equation when it comes to your tone. What you attach to it will really help establish what you're going to get out of it. And check out the Elysia Skulpter. If you are a 416 user and you're looking to really extend the amount, the different types of work you can do with it, right? If you really just want to find all the great tonal variations with the 416, there's a lot of ways you could explore it. But I'm telling you, check out the Elysia Skulpter because this thing, when added to the 416, I think it turns the 416 from just a really great recording tool into a voiceover power tool. And that's what I love. So what do you think? The Elysia Skulpter in the 416. I think it's a match made in heaven. But I want your opinion. All right? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, this is Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, fading to black. Oh, you know what I just realized? This camera angle really shows how I position my 416. I don't talk into it, I talk underneath it. And I point the thing right here, right between the eyes, triangle of sadness. And it also helps you get some of that nice radiant energy that comes off of your skull when you speak. It really helps add to the tone.